and welcome to the Mindset Michelle TV show. We're so super excited to have you join us again today for another wonderful, wonderful episode. And today's special guest is Jeremy Britton. Hello, Jeremy.
Thanks for having me.
It's so lovely to have you on the show. I keep getting this sense of deja vu having you on the show, but maybe it's just because of the beautiful blue that I can see you wearing there. We must have, just known that the blue would mean that we were so in sync together today. So thank you for coming on the show. And for those of you who haven't met Jeremy before, he's a financial planning person that's had an interesting journey from that start in his career all the way through to cryptocurrency today. But he started his first business in 1992. He sold a $5,000 startup business for 6 figures, and he's done many, many other things along the journey, from financial planning to doing meditation and that sort of more mindful sort of stuff, and now kind of bringing it together in his version and in his world in this cryptocurrency space. I can't even say the word at the moment, cryptocurrency. But like many of you, I will be very interested to hear him explain what cryptocurrency is, and it help us to understand a bit more what we're looking at with it all. So, Jeremy, do you want to say hello and explain to people a little bit more about how you came to be doing what you're doing today?
Well, first, I just want to explain to people, I did start in financial planning 30 years ago, 1992. So obviously, by looking at me, I was 4 at the time. I was very young. It was basically my first job. I dropped out of uni to start a business. Well, when I say it was my first job was flipping burgers at McDonald's, as most kids did when they were sort of 14 or 15 in this country. But my background is like I was the child of 2 employees. I was one of 6 children. And for most of my upbringing, there was only one income because there were so many children. So we didn't have a lot of money growing up. And the mindset that was instilled in me was the more hours you work, the more money that you get. And that was true for employees who are teachers. And, my parents were both teachers. And of course, when I went to school, I was taught by employees. I wasn't taught by entrepreneurs. So, and working my first job at McDonald's, you work 3 hours, you get more money than if you work 2 hours. So I always had this mindset of time is money. And the harder I work and the longer I work, the more money I get. And it was only through an accidental meeting of my rich dad mentor when I was 19 that I actually got to find out about business and entrepreneurialism. See, I'm having trouble with that one. And learning that you add value. And if you add enough value in the first 2 hours of the day, you can go home for the rest of the day. If you make enough money by Wednesday, you can take the rest of the week off. And that was just a really wild concept to me, one that I had never grown up with. And for someone who's been raised by employees and taught by employees, it's like going into another planet or to another country. The cultures and the customs here are totally different. I don't understand it. I don't fit in. I better learn really fast. So it was an interesting wake-up call for me as a young fella. But yeah, I started that first business. Of course, I was clever at school because my parents were school teachers, but I didn't know enough about business. I didn't know enough about the real world and that sort of stuff. So my first business failed after 6 months. Then I went back and started waiting tables and saving up money again, and started another business when I was 22, and because I'd learned from my mistakes. And my second business actually failed after 18 months because I didn't take out the appropriate insurance. And when my business partner got sick and spent 4 months in hospital, obviously the business went downhill because I was trying to work business as well as take care of my business partner and take care of my children and things. So at that stage, my ever helpful parents and friends said, obviously you suck at business, you failed twice, you need to go back to university, finish your degree and get a good job somewhere. But I sort of looked at my first business failed after 6 months. My second business went for 18 months. I'm actually 300% better than what I was before. And so then after that business failed, I started another one and another one. And my idea was, you know, if I could get this business to go for 2 or 3 years, maybe I could sell it to someone else before I crashed and burned it. And that was the idea. And for people who are in business, the ultimate product to sell is the business. Like, anyone can start a business. You can push a lawnmower down the street and you can start a business, and you can run a business, and that's okay if you know what you're doing. But to sell it to another person as a going concern and have them give you money for it, that's the ultimate challenge. And that was what I found was the really exciting thing. And building a business that didn't take all the time, because no one wants to buy a business where they're working 70 hours a week. You know, it's ridiculous. You're just buying yourself a full-time job. But if you can build a business where you're not working all the hours, then it's very easy for someone to buy that from you, or very easy for you to continue to run it. So
I really hear, and you put it so wonderfully, and I've heard it described in different ways before, but I really hear about that difference in the mindset of being an employee, and you turn up and you get paid per hour for your time. So it's a time versus money kind of equation, versus very much in that entrepreneurial space where, you know, it's time versus value versus money. Sorry, it's the value that you provide. And you know, you look at somebody like an Anthony Robbins or Tony Robbins or somebody like that, where they charge, you know, like $1,000 for 10 minutes or something like that, because the value that you get in that 10 minutes is the accumulation of many, many years of research and work in that space, as opposed to spending, you know, maybe $10 or $100 at a coach, but it's not necessarily at that same level as the Tony Robbins, because they haven't got the same sort of skill sets behind them. So I really hear that resilience and that strength that comes through in those life lessons, those early life lessons, that have then helped create who you are now and what you're doing now. And that's all really exciting. And I think, especially with that financial lens that you have, what do you then think is success to you now? What does success mean to you nowadays?
well, when I was very young, you know, you always see people on TV with fast cars and big houses and that sort of stuff, and you go, I want that. That's cool. The flip side of that is the Hollywood brainwashing, which a lot of people don't talk about, but it's pervasive. And once you see it, you realize, you know, you grow up on Scrooge McDuck, right? Scrooge has got all the money, but he's actually not a very nice person. And then you go into the Scooby-Doo generation, and the broke-ass college kids are always ripping the mask off this monster at the end of the show. And the scary monster is actually, he's the real estate developer who is trying to scare people away so he can buy the properties for cheap. And the rich guy is a bastard, you know. And then you go into other movies when you grow up a little bit, you get to watch Die Hard and, you know, Lethal Weapon and all this sort of stuff. And the rich person is always a rat bag. And it's always up to the broke-ass, broken-down cop to sort of, you know, get them on the right track. And you're just sort of brainwashed throughout Hollywood years, in your formative years, that rich is bad and poor is good. You know?
And I think that that's such an interesting realization, and a very important one, that money didn't equal evil, just as poor didn't equal happy. So not everybody kind of has those exposures at such a young age.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I said before, like, I've had a couple of businesses go bad. I've also had relationships go bad. I've had illness in my life, things like that. I've ended up homeless a couple of times after I became an entrepreneur. So I've been rich and I've been poor and I've been homeless in between things. And, you know, it changes you as a person, but it's more fun to have a great mindset and have money. You know, you can have a great mindset and be living in a cardboard box, but how many people can you impact? How many people can you help when you're the homeless guy living in a cardboard box, even if you're the Dalai Lama? You know, it takes money to actually have a TV show or to write a book or to have a platform where you can actually communicate with other people. And if you want to help the poor, the best way to help the poor is to not be poor. You know, if you've got money, you can build the Oprah Winfrey School or the Michelle School or whatever. You can help people that way, particularly if you know how to make money without working all the hours under the sun. And that was a big wake-up call for me.
And I really love that. I really do hear that difference that you're coming to there around how to communicate and talk about value as opposed to selling time or offering time. And so I'd love to hear for the people watching, what are some of the suggestions that you have around that, around tips or habits that people could do to keep formulating that focus more on identifying their value and packaging their value and sharing their value with their employer, with the market, with whoever it is? What are some of the suggestions that you might have around that?
It's so easy these days, Michelle, to start a side hustle. Like, 20, 30 years ago, obviously we didn't have the internet. So, you couldn't communicate with someone on the other side of the planet without making a very expensive phone call to France or whatever. But these days, like, kids in Africa living in a mud hut can buy a $25 smartphone and they can set up a drop shipping business. So, and that's one of those businesses that will literally make you money while you sleep. So things are so much easier nowadays. Like when I wrote my first book, it was literally, paying them to set up the big printing press and crank the handle and make the books come out the other end. And nowadays you write an ebook and you publish it on Amazon, and there's literally not very much cost involved at all. I have to pay thousands and thousands of dollars for the equipment. And even putting out like CDs and things like that. I put out CDs and DVDs back in the day. But you had to have them printed and packaged and that sort of stuff. And now it's just download on the internet. So looking at the technology that's available where you and I can talk, and it doesn't matter whether you're in Spain or Amsterdam or whatever, and having customers all around the world, it's amazing how you can start a side hustle and literally be selling internationally. Whatever you love to do, whatever your hobby is, there's someone out there in the world who's getting paid to do that. Like my daughter used to love riding horses, right? And that was an expensive hobby. But there's someone out there who's actually paid to ride a horse around the paddock. Same as there's, I like walking the dog, but there's some people out there who are too busy and they pay someone to walk the dogs. So whatever you like to do in your spare time, there's someone getting paid for that. And if you can find out what they do and how they do it, you can literally launch an international business. And it doesn't cost very much at all. So start your side hustle, add some value. And the other thing is realizing the mindset. So I had to realize that I'd been brainwashed. I'd been brainwashed by my parents, and God love them.
So just before we go on to that mindset and the side, I'm fascinated about this side hustle because as we know, the gig economy and the insecurity around work, it's something that I'm quite passionate about sharing with people, especially clients and if we're working in the career space, supporting people to understand that the security nowadays comes from them increasing their skills, looking at where the market's going and looking at the future of what they're passionate about doing, most importantly, but also then where their skills and what training they might need to be able to set themselves up for the future. So I think that this side hustle is something that is really very, very important. And I completely agree about the technology side of it. The fact that I can now do this TV show that goes out live globally twice a week, and soon to be 3 times a week next year. So each year that we're doing this, it's going to be, till eventually I will be like Oprah, and it'll be every day of the week. You can turn me on, you'll see me on TV or on the social media. But the technology to do that was only available to a limited few, maybe even 10 years ago. And so I really just wanted to pause and stress that now, because the same with the person in Africa that you were talking about. I saw somebody sharing some cooking tips about how to cook Ghanaian food the other day. I'd never eaten Ghanaian food. I don't know if I would eat goat and things like that, but it's not really my type of food. But I was thinking again exactly what we're talking about, that I can now see what typical Ghanaian food looks like and how it's prepared. And I'm sitting in Sydney in Australia, this technology has opened up exactly like you're saying. If there's somebody in, say, London who's raising children from a Ghanaian background, but it's forgotten because their parents have passed away or whatever, and forgotten how to cook one of these dishes. They can now go to somebody that's living in Ghana, still making these dishes, and say to the kids, oh, here we go, this is how to make, grandma's recipe.
And it's free. You can watch it on YouTube for free. You don't have to go and buy a cookbook or hire a Ghanaian chef or anything like that. So, yeah.
No. And again, the chef, would have been a specialist chef in XYZ, and now that information is all free and the technology is so much cheaper. So I just wanted to pause briefly there and just really reflect that one of those ways of being able to create that financial mindset and financial success is looking at, well, what's technology making available for me to be able to do? Thinking of it, like you're saying, with the side hustle in terms of doing it as a gig economy. I'm going to be doing a bit here and a bit there and a bit somewhere else, to just experiment and play, to then look at, well, I thought I'd enjoy that, but I didn't enjoy that, but I really enjoyed this and I thought I'd hate it, so I want to do more of this. And so I think that these are really fabulous tips and insights to share with people.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you're doing whatever job you're doing because you're good at that job, but there's also something that you really, really love to do, and that's whatever you're doing when you're not in your job. And some people say to me, oh, I just like to watch sports on the weekend, or I just like to watch movies on Netflix. I'm like, cool. You know what? There's someone who's actually paid to watch sports. They're called sports commentators. There's someone who's paid to watch movies. They're called movie critics. And all you got to do is watch this Batman movie and say, I didn't like it as much as the last Batman movie, and here's why, blah, blah, blah. You start a blog, So it doesn't matter. Everybody says to me, oh, like, you just say that you can turn a hobby into a side hustle. Every single freaking hobby, doesn't matter what it is, no matter what you like to do, there's always someone who's getting paid to do that. And people try and trick me and go, oh, but what about this? What about this? Yes, there is. Every single thing you can think of is someone who's getting paid to do that. So don't try and trick me. It happens. You just got to find out. There's probably 5 things you love to do, and you can start 5 side hustles, particularly using the technology, because it doesn't take that much time. The thing I was going to say before is about the mindset is understanding that you were born into a cult and you were programmed into the cult. You were given the mindset of the cult. So, born into a middle-class family in Australia. I was born Catholic, went to a Catholic school. The Catholic teaching is the Catholics are right and everyone else is wrong, right? The Buddhists are wrong, the Hindus are wrong, the whatever. But if I was born in the middle of sub-Saharan Africa, or if I was born in India or whatever, I would grow up in a totally different religion. I'd be Muslim, I'd be Hindu, I'd be Buddhist, I'd be whatever. And I'd be thinking everybody else is wrong. And you've got this mindset that I'm right, everyone else is wrong. But when you start to travel, when you start to meet other people, even chatting to people on Facebook from different countries, different religions, different cultures, and you go, shit, we were all programmed. And it wasn't their parents' fault. They didn't do it deliberately because they grew up in the same cult. It's been going on for generation after generation after generation. But once you realize that you're in a cult, you can deprogram yourself, you can unbrainwash yourself, and you can change your methodology. Because, Richard Branson's kids aren't going to grow up pushing shopping trolleys or flipping burgers, right? Because they grew up with the mindset of an entrepreneur. And for most part, most people, if your parents were both employees and they both went to church on Sundays, you're going to be an employee and you're going to go to church on Sundays, and you're probably going to buy the same brand car that your dad bought, or, whatever, because that's what we do. We inherit these values, as you were saying before, but it's never too late to change them. Once you realize you've been programmed, you can unprogram yourself. The danger is when you don't realize you've been programmed by your parents and your schools and your teachers and the Hollywood and whatever else that your upbringing has instilled values, even the music that you listen to, So once you realize you've been programmed, you can shift that and change that. And meditation is one of the greatest tools that I've ever discovered.
I completely agree. Having belonged to a few cults at different times, in that definition of cult, I should say. I went to a Catholic high school. I'm not Catholic, but I did go to a Catholic high school. And I have belonged to a couple of different spiritual groups. And I have lived and worked in Chile and some weird and wonderful places around the planet. So I have been very lucky to have those insights that you're talking about, to understand that my belief system, if you like, is something that in some ways I've inherited, but then chosen back into as well, because there comes a point where as an adult, when you see something that's different or doesn't match what you believe, you then start to choose back into it. I think for me, one of those interesting points was I didn't come to the entrepreneur world until I was quite a bit older than 19. And mostly because I was too busy traveling around the world. But when I did, what I realized was exactly that it was for me that shift from I'm selling time to I'm selling value. And the value is around, well, I have a unique skill set or mountain of value that nobody else has, and everybody has their own unique fountain of value. And it's about packaging that and how to then promote it and sell it and explain it to people in a way that they go, oh, okay, yes, I value Michelle's time at the same way that I value Tony Robbins or Oprah Winfrey, or I value Michelle's time, you know, even more. It could be any of those. It in my scale, it only goes up. But but that cult that we're
we've got to show you
talking-
some stock market charts, darling. Some
That's
crypto
it.
charts.
Yeah, it's
it doesn't
all,
always go up in a straight line. It's sometimes just up and down and up and down and up and down.
up and down, up and down.
Yeah.
Well, I did relate when you were talking about homeless, because I have, as an entrepreneur in my entrepreneur world, had some really tough times financially, like everybody does, and it does build that resilience in you and that appreciation for when things are going better and when things flow. But I think it also helps to always bring it back to, well, why are you doing things and what's your purpose? And that also, I think, helps to break out of that cult, because I think, like many people, I sort of moved from the employee cult to the entrepreneur cult. And then when I realized that that was just a different version of cult, actually, no, the only cult I'm interested in is the internal, what is my vision and purpose for myself, that doesn't fit in any of these outward definitions of cults. But this is a journey that takes time, and even for, you know, Richard Branson and people like that, their children are growing up in that entrepreneur cult, if you like. So they then have, in a sense, a difficulty understanding what an employee worldview would be, because they'll never experience doing the hamburgers, or for me it was doing kebabs. I worked with some Greek men. I was working with these older Greek guys selling kebabs, and it was very, very, very educational at that younger age. But having those life experiences to then understand that these are the belief systems that we choose into is I think, one of the important, wonderful messages that you're sharing there.
I talk a lot about belief systems, and I always use capital B, capital S, because it's BS. It's all BS. You know, whatever race, religion, country, food, you know, it's all BS to someone. You know, so you again, being entrepreneurial, being benevolent billionaire, being a hard-working, working-class person, being whatever religion or whatever race you are, it's all BS. Absolutely, it's all a belief system. And you peel off the skin, you take away the tools of the trade and say, who are you as a person? You're not really a teacher, you're not really a quarry worker, you're not really an electrician. Before that, you were just a person. And at some stage, you had no concept of what color your skin was or what gender you were or anything like that. And going back to that root thing, and that's why I love meditation. I still meditate every day, because you go back to the root of who you really, really are. If you don't describe yourself as, you know, a parent or a worker or a, you know, a member of your extended family, or you don't describe yourself by your job, and that's people's most default. When they meet you, they ask you, what do you do? But no one actually asks you, what do you value? What do you stand for? What do you hope to achieve with your life? And those are some of the really cool conversations, because if you said, what do you do? I go, I manage a hedge fund for cryptocurrency. People go, oh, okay. And that's the end of the conversation. If someone asks me, what do I stand for? I say, I stand for abundance through education. And because I had to relearn after 12 years of school, I had to relearn what abundance really was. And it's not just money, it's having great health and great relationships and balance in your life, and taking the time off to go to the movies or the opera or the, you know, whatever, the ballet, whatever you like to do. It's travel and meet other people. an abundance of time to enjoy those activities. But that all comes from education. And sometimes it's an education of teaching someone how to make a week's wage in an hour. Sometimes it's an education of destroying their programming and getting back to the root of who they were before they thought they were someone else. And as I say, unbrainwashing the person. And that's what I've lived through my whole life. You know, when I was financial planning, I wrote the book so I could educate people how to understand the stock market so they could make it simple, so they could make money while they slept. And that's what I'm doing with cryptocurrency, teaching people how it works so they can make money while they sleep. And then during their daylight hours, they can do the things they love to do. It doesn't have to be what I enjoy. You know, I love meditation. I love hypnotherapy. I love talking to people. But maybe you like reading books and sitting in the corner and being quiet because you're an introvert. And that's the way you travel, is by reading all the books written by people who have already traveled. That's okay. You know, learn enough so that you've got enough time to do the thing that you really love to do, or do the thing that you love to do and capitalize on that by having a side hustle so you can make money living your best life. You know, some people make money by traveling. They end up on the travel shows or writing travel blogs or something like that. Whatever it is, find out how to make a quid from it. And then what are you going to do with that money? Once you're making more money than you can spend, what are you going to do with that? Where you direct it? Like Oprah started the Oprah Winfrey School, and that's fine for her because she's got $9 billion, but not everybody does that. Maybe you'll start off by sponsoring one child to go to school. And like, we sponsor kids in Africa, and it's like $15 a month to pay a school teacher, because obviously the wage disparity, right? And we can get the school teacher to teach them entrepreneurial education rather than employee education. And to send a child to school and buy them lunch is about 50, 60 cents. You know,
Wow.
So it's not that expensive to empower the next generation. And some of these kids are going to grow up and get their doctorate degree and leave Africa, and they might be giving me life-saving surgery in 20, 30 years' time. I don't know. We're sowing into the next generation. But
it is.
I'm not the Oprah Winfrey, but we've sponsored over 200,000 kids in Africa over the last 8 years, just little by little by little by little. Because once you make enough money and you fill your own needs, then you say, who else can I fill up? And maybe by giving them money if they need money, or maybe by giving them education if they need education, maybe giving them some of your time or some inspiration, mentoring somebody else, teaching someone else what you know. There's so many ways of giving back, and that's really the fun part.
And that's really the where the magic happens and where it comes back to the purpose. So once you've deconstructed the cult or the belief systems, then coming back to the purpose. And I think we could talk so much more about this, but we're coming to time. And so how can people get hold of you if they want to hear more?
They can get a hold of me at bostontrading.co. That's no M on the end, not com. BostonTrading.co is where we have the crypto hedge fund. You'll find all the links to Twitters and Facebooks and things like that. And you can connect with me because obviously I've had 30 years in business and 30 years in financial planning. Been doing crypto for the last 6 years because crypto is only relatively new, but I do have a lot of experience in other areas. So if something that I've said about my past life resonates with you, feel free to have a chat about that as well.
That's fabulous. And I love asking this question of people, but if you were to give some advice to your younger self, what might that advice be?
Wow, I give this advice to everybody I meet, is learn to meditate. Really, once you strip away, all the thoughts that are running through your head that have usually been programmed by other people who they do love you, they do want what's best for you, but they want you to do what they did. They want you to become part of their cult because they were very happy working in the railway for 50 years, or they were very happy working in the bank for 50 years, or being a particular religion. So they love you, they want what's best for you. But if you meditate, clear your mind of all that stuff, and then you can actually have the still small voice, that comes in and says, I really want to make ice cream. I don't want to be what everybody else wants me to be. I really want to do this. And that's like you're listening to your heart rather than listening to your brain and your mind and everybody else's thoughts. So that's what I would say. Get clear, meditate, and then life changes abundantly in all areas. As I say, money, relationships, health, everything. Once you get clear, listen to your heart, shut down the monkey mind, then life falls into place. It's amazing.
Wow, and what a wonderful way to finish there. Hearing from somebody who's worked his whole career in finances, talking about connecting with your heart. It's a really wonderful way to hear that, such an important message from somebody that's been so successful in so many different ways, but understands that at the end of the day, it comes back to that connection to your heart. So thank you so very, very much for being on the show today, Jeremy.
Thank you.
It's been a real, real pleasure. And so to all of you viewers out there, thank you again for watching today and for being a part of this incredible journey as we keep talking to these specialists and these experts in all of these different wonderful kind of areas, and hearing about, at the end of the day, it all comes back to your heart. So from my heart to your heart, for now, be great, be fabulous, and be you.